Great to have you with us this morning. We want to get to a developing story tied to the trade story between Canada and the U.S. Now, you'll recall on Friday, U.S. President Donald Trump terminated all trade discussions with Canada in response to the country's digital services tax, which imposed a levy totaling millions of dollars on major U.S. companies that was due today. However, the Canadian government gave in to Trump's demand and rescinded the tax, with trade negotiations now expected to resume. Does this give Americans an advantage in negotiations with Canada? Joining us from Ottawa to talk more about this is Colin Robertson, a former Canadian diplomat and vice president and fellow at the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Colin, it's nice to have you with us. Let's start with your reaction to the Canadian government's decision on this controversial tax.
Well, this was a tax that was always controversial, and it was due to take effect on Monday, with the big tech companies paying, $2.3 million in what they were obliged to pay. And controversial part because it was retroactive, and it had been, there were not all the provinces, including Ontario, agreed this was a good tax, and there was some question whether this was going to withstand the scrutiny of a review under the USMCA. So Mr. Trump's decision on Friday was in some ways no surprise, came earlier than we expected. And the government, I think, just decided, let's just put this aside, because more important for us is to get the economic and defense security arrangement that we're trying to seek with the United States.
And Bloomberg reporting that there were a number of Canadian business groups that were urging the Carney government to drop this tax as well. So I would imagine there was some feedback coming into the government, which, as you mentioned, is looking to get to some broader agreement with the Trump administration. Some had seen this digital tax as a bargaining chip for the Carney government in its negotiations. Where did you stand on that possibility?
Well, yes, it was a bargaining chip. It was certainly something I thought we would probably give up. Normally what you do in negotiations is you make your concessions at the end. But the Carney government, I guess, took a look at the situation and said, because we have been in discussions with the U.S. government since Prime Minister Carney visited and met with Mr. Trump last month in the Oval Office. And I think they decided, let's just put this aside. This was one we were probably going to give up anyways. We don't know, but there are signs we are making some progress. My guess is, from the U.S. side, Mr. Trump decided to throw this in, and Canada conceded. Now the negotiations keep going, and with the hopes that we'll reach something by July 21st. That's probably aspirational, but if you're still in discussions, these dates can roll forward. What is important, though, is to stay in discussion and effectively do the review between Canada and the United States on the Canada-U.S.-Mexico agreement, or U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement, however you want to parse it, sooner than later.
Yeah, we were taking a look at the Canadian dollar, which has reacted to this news, gaining strength against the U.S. currency. So certainly the markets are closely watching every new development on the trade front. You talked about this plan to restart negotiations, aim to agree to a deal by July 21st. Sounds like you're not sold that we'll necessarily get there, but what would be the key things to watch for that would indicate to you that progress is indeed being made?
Well, I guess probably something from Donald Trump on Truth Social. He seems to be, as you know, very adept at either throwing a hand grenade into things or else declaring things are moving forward. As we know, it's never over till it's over. But what is, I think, important is that the negotiators from both the Canadian side and the American side at a very high level are meeting and are discussing. And from the Trump administration's perspective, they haven't really closed a deal yet. They've got the UK-US framework. They've got the truce with China. But if you were to do a big deal with Canada, which is the largest export market for most American states and for the United States, that would actually send, I think, a signal to the rest of the world that there can be agreements under the new Trump trade regime.
Okay, and actually, just since the world is obviously watching how each country negotiates with the United States, and I believe a number of countries had already targeted large technology companies with similar styles of taxes. I believe the UK is one example. Do you think Canada taking this move will then sort of spark a conversation for other countries that were either considering or have implemented similar measures?
Yes, I think it will. As you know, we've been in negotiation at the OECD for a number of years. We felt the U.S. was dragging its heels, so that's why Canada decided to proceed, got ahead of the European Union and other countries like the UK on this, and now we've paid the price. But it is something that I think will come back, but it would be far better if we could negotiate something in a setting like the OECD or multilaterally, and I think that was the preferred route of the United States. But as I say, our feeling under both the Biden administration and the Trump administration wasn't really negotiating, but the Biden administration was dragging its heels. Something will happen at some point, but better to do it with other countries rather than, I think, the way we proceeded, which was pretty arbitrary and left us very vulnerable. And with the result on Friday, we saw the result.